start looking at adding a second defense.
Well, I'm only in a league with 6 people, so in my opinion, I'm not sure whether I should have 2 or just take 1. So you've given me a little insight about what my thinking is at this particular point. So thanks for the FYI. Okay, with that said, let's talk about your next matchup, and that's Tennessee DSD. Is that a double standard league or whatever is it called?
No, that's a defense/special teams.
Is that what it is? Nothing like learning all this new terminology. And they take on the Buffalo Bills. All right, what's your perception on that?
Yeah, so I think that honestly, Tennessee's defense has been playing lights out this year. They've been really good against. They were really good against Cleveland in Week 1. I mean, they made Cleveland look absolutely silly. And then, you know, they stopped up, what was it, Atlanta. And Atlanta just couldn't move the ball. And really, the defense for the Titans is playing so solid. They're able to stop the run. They're able to stop the pass. They're able to play all aspects of defense to really make things difficult on another team. And when you're going into this next week, where the game is going to be at home in Nashville, you're going up against the Buffalo Bills team that may be without Josh Allen, because as far as we know, he's still in the concussion protocol. Today he was doing individual drills and not out with the actual team, so he's still doing a little bit, but no contact. He's still in the concussion protocol, so it may be Matt Barkley playing. And while Barkley has had some decent games coming into play for Josh Allen or whoever else was ahead of him in Buffalo, while he's had some okay games, they've never been against great defenses. Like his stellar games were against like the Jets or something like that, where defense was kind of okay but not great. He's going to be going up against a very good defense if it happens to be Barkley playing. And so in that case, I love the Tennessee Titans defense. That was actually who I tried picking up this week, and tried dropping Baltimore for him. Apparently someone was ahead of me in the waiver orders. So.
Yeah, it's funny how you say that. I actually added the Houston Texans defense and still kept Baltimore, but I'll keep the Texans defense, but I don't know whether Baltimore is going to stick around. That's something I'll have to think about, but I don't know. And you know who actually gave me the tip on that? Your buddy UK Anthony Wood, who lives in that neck of the woods. So.
Yeah.
All right, so we got a couple other ones, and I want to supplement some content with what you have. Let's talk about Wilson and the LA Rams.
Wilson, okay, so here's the deal. Wilson playing at home, I think, can take advantage of the mistakes that are happening in the Rams' defense, especially in their defensive secondary. We look at last week, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers went into LA and basically just took apart the Rams defense. Put up, 54 points against them?
Hard to believe.
And so, one of the things that, I was watching the NFL Network and saw Charlie Casserly, say one of the things about the Rams is that when they win time of possession, they're 18-1. Over the last in the Sean McVay era, that's what in 9 games or in basically 9 games a season, 10 games a season, they win the time of possession. They've been doing that with Gurley for the most part, running the ball. Right. That being said, Gurley has not been able to really run the ball all that well. His most effective plays for Gurley have been in the pass game, and so if they can keep Gurley contained, which I'm somewhat hesitant about simply because of the fact that they had a hard time containing David Johnson in the pass game on this last Sunday in Arizona. But being at home, prime time, the Seahawks are always great on prime time. And against a defense that just gave up 54 points, 4 touchdowns, and 385 yards to Jameis Winston, but let's be honest, while he can have great games, he is not the talent. He is not the excellence, let's just put it that way, of Russell Wilson. I think that Russell Wilson put up an absolutely solid game. There are a lot of people wondering, against the Rams, is Wilson going to play well?
Right.
For the most part, the last couple of years, the Seahawks have played very well against the Rams. None of them have been low-scoring games. The last two times that they played against the Rams, I want to say both scores were in the 30s, and in both games it came down to the final possession.
Okay. Well, all right. So I know you talked about Gurley at Seattle, and so do you think that he does have an effective game against Seattle?
I don't think he runs well. I don't think that in the run game he runs well. I think he will be more effective in the passing game, much like Alvin Kamara was against the Seahawks 2 weeks ago when New Orleans came into Seattle. Kamara, I think, finished that game with 9 catches for 90-some yards and a touchdown. That is more where I see Gurley being effective, is in the pass game. We'll kind of see where that goes. The Seahawks, their defense has been very interesting this year. The Seahawks have been actually playing a base 4-3 almost no matter what, because of some of the injuries and stuff that have happened in their secondary, and because of how well their linebackers can run and keep up with, even with wide receivers. They have been playing 3 linebackers, even on third down against Arizona. When Arizona was running 5 wides, they were still running 3 linebackers. So it'll be interesting to see. I think that the Rams are a little more talented at the wide receiver position. Will be able to combat that a little bit more. So I think this goes to being a high-scoring game in general. But because of that, I think that Wilson will put up decent numbers, very good numbers, and could be a top 3, top 4 quarterback this week.
All right, so let's go back to week 3, okay? We've touched on it, but now we're going to really touch on it some more. You're right. I found it hard to believe that the Buccaneers could put 55 points on the board against the Rams. And then you also summed it up by saying, who would have thought that the Cleveland Browns would have beaten the Baltimore Ravens and put up 40 of their own? I mean, those to me are the most mind-boggling games that I saw last weekend. What about you, Ryan?
Definitely. I mean, I did it. I'm part of a pick'em. I'm part of a pick'em, an NFL pick'em. Oh, just a second. My son got hurt.
That's all right.
I'm part of a pick'em that last week's games, I only got 5 right of 12 or 13.
Did ya?
That's how bad it was for me. That's how bad it was for me in terms of this game, in terms of picking games last week.
Right.
So I am definitely not. I was definitely surprised by those ones. And so for me, I couldn't believe what was going on. I loved it for fantasy because I have Jarvis Landry, and I have Chris Godwin and Jameis Winston on one team. So I was expecting to get absolutely smoked. And it turns out I end up winning both those matchups.
Well, and here's the thing. I sat Chris Godwin last weekend, and all my wide receivers, I didn't quite get it done. I mean, I kid you not, I had Sammy Watkins, I had DeAndre Hopkins, and I put Kenny Galladay as a flex player. I'm trying to think of the other guy I had, but it doesn't matter. Godwin was great, and he was on the bench, but what can you do? What did I say? Sammy Watkins. I had DeAndre Hopkins didn't do very well, and you would think those 2 guys would be able to do a lot more. And Amari Cooper is the other guy, so. And none of those guys were able to get me many points. But again, like you said, Ryan, the intriguing part of this fantasy stuff, it's all about the matchup and who's hot on a given day. Even us football experts that think we know everything when it comes to this crapshoot, okay, don't know nothing. But that's beside the point. So I know that's not a rant of the day. That's called a fact of the day. So
seriously, for the I don't know who any of our listeners who follow Brad Evans, who's one of the famous Yahoo fantasy analysts. He always says that there is no such thing as a fantasy football expert.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone is a fan analyst. He calls them fanalists. Everyone is a fanalist who puts their ideas and thoughts out there. We look at the stats. We give our interpretation. We're either right or we're wrong.
Well,
that's how there's no such thing as a fantasy football expert.
I got to tell you something, though. At my meeting with Dr. Josh Kirby, who's a chiropractor in the Coral Springs, Coconut Creek area, this guy is clueless about fantasy football. I said, you know what, Doc? Whether you're clueless or not, it's something we got to do, and we do it well. So, but that's okay. I mean, but believe me, it took me just a few years ago before I bought into this stuff. But let's face it, people get involved in it. And here's the thing, which is intriguing about fantasy football, is the sports stars are killing it, because now people are only rooting for teams, they're rooting for players. So it really has added such a dimension in terms of the marketing aspect of football. So I got a few things I want to add to this conversation, and we'll go ahead and do it. We'll start with Kirk Cousins, who actually apologized to Adam Thielen and admits that he's missed his opportunities.
Yeah, there was an interesting story to see. I mean, what else can you say? That Kirk Cousins has just been awful this year.
Right.
You think about everything they did last year. I mean, you look at game one. It's one thing when they're only throwing like 13. I think Cousins had 10 pass attempts in the first game.
Right.
But Dalvin Cook also ran for like 140 yards.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, if that's the game plan, fine. But when you have to be throwing the ball, and Kirk Cousins is just playing missing wide receivers, and even Thielen, who Kirk Cousins has always been most comfortable throwing to the slot. That's verifiable over the last few years.
Right. Not
just with Adam Thielen, last year, but also Jamison Crowder was huge in Washington when Kirk Cousins was there, because of how much Kirk Cousins depended on his slot receivers and those kind of throws over the middle. I watched a little bit of the game between Minnesota and Chicago, and getting down to the end of it when the Vikings had to move the ball, and Cousins was just missing over and over and over again. It was ugly. So,
go figure. All right, well, let's go on to the Indianapolis Colts. Their GM, Chris Ballard, says that Jacoby Brissett hasn't flinched since becoming a starter, which I think is great. And let's add something to that. Okay, Ryan, that Aaron Ebron is suffering from the same problem with the Detroit Lions that he is with the Colts. He can't hold on to the football, Ryan. But let's start with Brissett first. Are you surprised that he's gone ahead and made the transition like he has? Of course, we can't lose sight of the X factor that Frank Reich is his head coach. Go ahead.
I think it's I believed in Jacoby Brissett when we found out that Luck was not going to be playing anymore, and that Jacoby Brissett was going to have to be the starting quarterback. I had no problems with that. I thought that Jacoby Brissett was in a much different position this year than he was a couple of years ago when he had to take over because Luck missed the entire year.
Right.
They have a better offensive line.
Right.
They have a new head coach that has completely turned around the culture.
Right.
They've got more offensive weapons. They've got a defense who can do good things and stop the other team and give the offense a chance to run the ball. Not only run the ball but also be able to pass the ball. Let's not forget that Jacoby Brissett started out in New England and was under the tutelage of Tom Brady and Bill Belichick.
Right.
For the first, it was a year and a half of his career. So he's really had the opportunity to grow, to take his lumps here and there, but has been surrounded by great football minds,
right,
to point him in the right direction. And he's had the year to get beat up. He's already had that,
right.
And so now he can step into being the starter. From the beginning of the year, he's basically already, he was already working with the ones in practices just because Luck couldn't practice yet.
Right.
And so he's been in the perfect position to put up the season that he has so far.
Well, and yet I found it ironic, Ryan, that when New England traded him, it's one thing to trade him, but it's another one that trade him to the Colts, who you